Welcome back to PC-88 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-88, the most popular Japanese PC series of the 1980s. I'm Mr. Jakes. A little over a year ago on PC-88 Paradise, I played Emerald Dragon, an absolute classic JRPG for Japanese PCs, originally released in 1989. And in recent Emerald Dragon news, the 1994 PC Engine remake of that game now has an English patch. But today I'm not here to talk about that game, but rather the company that made it, Glodia, and what they made next. On this channel, I've often used this graphic to illustrate the exodus of employees from Glodia to Right Stuff after Emerald Dragon was released. But of course, this is an oversimplification, and Glodia continued to exist. They had lost a ton of good talent, however, including the character designer and scenario writer from Emerald Dragon. They spent most of 1990 porting Emerald Dragon to other PCs, but eventually they had to put out something new. They never did make an Emerald Dragon 2, but in summer 1991, a whole new team with only the programmer and main music composer staying on finally released the next original Glodia RPG, and their final game for the PC-88, Vain Dream. I had a vain dream once. I was the king of the world. Woo-hoo-hoo!
It's good to be the king.
I don't really know why the game is called Vain Dream, but assume it must have something to do with rulers and their lust for conquest. Of course, the developers probably also just thought it sounded cool. But at any rate, I had very little experience with this game before now, or any of Glodia's titles after Emerald Dragon for that matter. And since I enjoyed Emerald Dragon a lot on the PC-88, I'd been really looking forward to checking out Vain Dream eventually too. So without further ado, let's dig in. After relying on outside publishers for both Zavvis and Emerald Dragon, Vain Dream is Glodia's first original game that was self-published. The back of the game promises a powered-up version of the highly acclaimed system from Emerald Dragon, as well as powered-up visuals.
Power up.
Uh-oh, what's this screenshot? A first-person dungeon? First-person dungeons are just something I've gotten used to dealing with in these old RPGs. Definitely not my first choice, but I'll give it a chance. Inside, first we have a user support card, and then a map of the game. The first part of the manual about the story and characters is in color, while the rest is in black and white. Since there's a cartoon of a gamepad here, I'm expecting this to be the first ever Glodia RPG that has perfect gamepad support. The game has 7 floppies, which consist of the opening disc, system disc, and data discs A through E. First of all, let's check out that opening disc. So Vain Dream takes place in the world of Elzeria, which was once populated by gods over 1,000 years ago. Those gods left behind sacred weapons known as the treasures of the gods, including the Sword of El, the weapon of the goddess El, who created Elzeria. After a long peaceful period, the world, now populated by humans, is threatened by the ambitions of an island nation to the southeast called Seljild. They first conquer the historical and cultural capital Astrafil in the south, before proceeding to attack Duma, where our protagonist is a soldier. Unlike Zavvis and Emerald Dragon, here Glodia seems to have dropped the whole Middle Eastern naming convention, and our hero is named Tristarum, or Triss for short. The music here using the soundboard too is really melodic, and sounds almost like it should have lyrics. Maybe they should have done that on the arranged soundtrack. Triss fights one of Seljild's 7 wizard knights, Granzam, but he's too strong and Triss ends up taking a swim. Oh, come on. Really? It's not the exact same shot or anything, but it's pretty similar to that famous scene in East 2. Anyway, this is Melwyn, or Mel, an orphan who was studying magic in Astrophil until it was attacked by Selgild and her parents were killed. She was taken then to safety in the northern town of Esperanza. For 3 months, Mel nurses Triss back to health, but as he gets better, she dreads what's coming next. She wants nothing more than to live here in peace with Triss, but Triss thinks only of taking back his homeland and avenging his fallen comrades. The opening just repeats over and over. To start the game, we've got to boot the system disk with data disk A in drive 2. So we start out here in Mel's house. You can press the left trigger button to open the menu, which is a more typical toggle-based menu rather than the antiquated number pad interface in Emerald Dragon. And in fact, Vain Dream can be played entirely with the gamepad. Even the world map can be opened without a keyboard. So indeed, this is the first Glodia game that has perfect gamepad support. The discussion command is here again, as well as most of the other functions from Emerald Dragon. For game saves, you get either 3 slots on the system disk, or you can create a user disk with 64 slots if you don't mind switching disks. One of my favorite features you might recall from Emerald Dragon was the RAM disk option. You turn this on and then wait about 20 seconds for it to load a bunch of data into the RAM on the Soundboard 2, which will reduce loading time from the floppy disks throughout the game. And Vain Dream has something similar but more modern and practical called the cache driver. This also requires a Soundboard 2, but when you enable it, there's no initial wait time. Instead, as you play the game, it will just keep frequently used data in RAM, reducing the wait time between screens from 5 seconds to 1 second, according to the manual. In the beginning of the game, Mel has locked herself in her room upstairs and won't come out, but when Triss leaves, she communicates with him telepathically. Wow, that's a neat wizard trick.
Hey buddy, that dog just talked!
He did not, dumbass. He's like communicating telepathetically.
She tells Triss to find the warrior from Astrophil who brought her to this village. He should be at the pub. That warrior turns out to be Caron, our first additional party member. We can now explore the forest and try out the battle system. In this one, rather than random battles, there are enemies who will chase after you. They're pretty aggressive and hard to avoid, actually. There's an item that will allow you to temporarily run faster and get away more easily. The battle system is pretty much exactly the same as Emerald Dragon, but with taller characters and a meter that pops up to show how much damage was done. You'll notice you can only have a max of 3 characters in this one instead of 5, and that's probably because the PC-88 version chokes whenever there's a large number of enemies on screen, even on an 8 MHz PC-88. Once again, you can only control your main character, Triss, but thankfully this one gives you a lot more options to guide your computer-controlled party members. Rather than just targeting a certain enemy, you can also give them commands like use regular attacks or use healing magic. That being said, most of the time what the characters do by default is good enough to get by, so I seldom bothered giving them orders. And again, if any single character should die, it's game over, and you hear a little scream when either a boss or one of your characters dies. Wow, that was pathetic. Okay, well anyway, when you win a battle, experience points in this one are expressed as a percentage of the amount required toward the next level. This makes a lot of sense when all party members are at the same level, but quickly turns into a bad idea when they're not. Since the percentage all party members receive is the same, there's no chance for the weaker characters to catch up. I can see why no other RPGs use this experience system. Another thing unique to Vain Dream is the ring system. At the item shop, it's explained that the characters in this world usually use magic rings to heal, though there are standard healing herb items as well. When you have a ring equipped, the character will get a little HP restored if it is below a certain amount at the beginning of their turn. But of course this doesn't last forever, and the rings will break and need to be replaced after being used, say, 20 or 30 times or so. It's hard to confirm the actual number. Better rings that restore more HP become available the further you get into the game. Another really awesome thing about Vein Dream is that instead of one main battle BGM, there are 3. I believe it just cycles between the 3 different tunes. What an excellent idea! The battle BGM is usually the first music to get worn out when playing an RPG. The only thing is that 2 of the battle BGMs sound like they were heavily inspired by Ys 3. Yes, Ys 3 specifically. Of course, I'm not complaining though. If you're gonna copy other game music, you might as well copy from the best. Okay, so what are Triss and Charon doing in this forest anyway? Well, there have been a string of child abductions taking place recently, and the culprit is believed to still be lurking somewhere in town. Some of the victims have been found in the forest north of town, so Triss and Charon have been given permission to investigate. The victims have all been boys of a certain age, and so the last remaining boy who meets the criteria has been disguised as a girl. When talking to the NPCs in the bar, Charon lets one of the patrons know all about this clever plan, and so then immediately the boy is kidnapped by the guy from the bar, who turns out to be a monster. The mom tells Triss this is all his fault, but hey, technically it was Charon's. The monster runs into the forest, and we can investigate the ruins here which before were blocked off. After the message pops up to explain that the door has been broken open, Triss backs away automatically, even though what you're supposed to do now is go inside. In a video game, when my character automatically backs away from something, I instinctively think that means I'm not supposed to go that way. This is a weird holdover from Zavis. Why does it do that? And why didn't they fix it by now? And actually, a lot of how the game behaves is still the same as those earlier games, like the visual transitions and sounds it makes for the message window or for the transition between scenes. Luckily, a few of the most annoying sound effects have finally been changed, but still it all feels a bit old for a game from 1991. In many ways, they just wholesale reused the game engine from Emerald Dragon. But a more charitable interpretation you could make is that they wanted to give their games a consistent feel over the years. While Vein Dream has many improvements, you still know you are definitely playing a Glodia game. The treasure chest melody is also the same. Though the melody itself actually dates back to Glodia games even earlier than Zavis. I think it's considered to be the Glodia theme. But okay, anyway, let's enter those ruins. And here's where we get that first-person dungeon shown on the back of the case. I really appreciate that it has animation, like in Phantasy Star 1 or Shining in the Darkness. That makes it feel so much less disorienting. This dungeon doesn't have any enemies, and it's a very simple maze with only one way through. Afterward, you'll be taken to the real dungeon, which plays in the standard overhead view.
What's this? Oh, this is the real party, Chris.
And you're never gonna believe what I'm going to say next, but this first-person dungeon here is the only one in the entire game. Yep, it's like they made this cool first-person dungeon interface and then decided, you know what, first-person dungeons are totally dumb, let's just have regular dungeons. But still they bothered to make it, so I guess they just put it in the game anyway. So this isn't a dungeon, it's a tech demo. The real dungeon is actually pretty long, but I'll skip to the boss. We catch up to that monster where we see the game's first cutscene. The cutscenes in this one are generally pretty short and have small graphics, but it's really nice how frequent they are. Emerald Dragon and Alshark would often leave you high and dry without a cutscene for a really long time. The monster uses a magic gem to freeze Triss and Charon in place, but Mel comes to save them, and the three of them fight the boss. So the child is saved. Caron leaves the party, and Triss and Mel set off together on the overworld map for the first time. Whereas Emerald Dragon had towns as part of the overworld that you just kind of wandered into, Vain Dream uses the more traditional RPG system where you have a separate overworld and towns. And here the overworld and dungeons actually feel like they were made to be navigated by humans. Triss and Mel head now to Triss's hometown of Duma, which is completely destroyed and deserted. There they meet the next party member, a bard named Raphael. Raphael saw a number of children being taken into Duma Castle at the northern end of town, but it's heavily guarded with a boss battle that just repeats every time you approach. By the way, this is a great place to do some leveling, and I remember there was a part similar to this in Emerald Dragon. I should make it clear though that while in Vain Dream you do usually end up doing some leveling whenever you enter a new area, it's by no means a very grindy game. The party learns that the survivors of Duma are living in the mine north of town. There, the head priest of the town is killed, and we have to defeat his assassin. A scene so important it was deemed worthy of not one, but 2 cutscenes. One thing we do learn before the priest dies is that he knew Triss's deceased father, and that he had said that Triss would carry the fate of the world on his shoulders one day. Oh, so he's the chosen one for some reason. That figures. More importantly, deeper in the mine we meet a mysterious man named Armis studying the books hidden there. He seems surprised by Triss's appearance, but it won't be explained why yet. After defeating a dragon boss, the party uses a minecart to escape. This scene surprised me since there was nothing quite this comical ever in Emerald Dragon. The party takes a secret passage they learned from the priest into Duma Castle. The Count inside the castle tries to have us fight one of Selgild's 7 wizard knights named Mordred. But when Mordred sees the party, he for some reason declines to fight. So instead we fight the Count and then save the children from the prison, finally putting an end to the child abduction arc of the story. Next, Triss wants to attack Selgild at their stronghold of Asrafil, but Raphael says it's too dangerous, and they instead try to join forces with the Resistance rumored to be hiding beneath the city. When they get to the sewers though, they're greeted by another one of Selgild's wizard knights, named Thorn. Triss is easily defeated by her in a cutscene, which looks like it was originally supposed to take place outdoors instead of underground. Raphael gives Triss and Mel a chance to escape using a pendant which repels magic, and we watch a scene of Mel automatically running through the city and the woods to narrowly escape. She meets some hobbits, who are usually wary of humans, but since Triss is near death, they decide to help. Triss's wound is a magical one, and the hobbits say that the only way to save him is with a particular flower from a mountain nearby, and so we set off now with a party consisting of Mel and Raimia, the hobbit from the cutscene earlier. The Hobbit City is interesting to navigate. While it's not nearly as bad as some of the cities in modern RPGs, the towns in Vain Dream are definitely a bit large for my taste. I'm sure they were trying to make them seem more realistic and lived in with all the random houses and buildings, but they're much bigger than they need to be from a gameplay perspective. Look at this one later in the game. This isn't a town, it's a maze! And worst of all, you have to walk through this one every time you need to get to the other side of the map. But anyway, Mel and Raimia go to the mountain to save Triss. There they meet Armes again, who this time joins the party. Armes is a strong magic user who made it easy for me to do some quick leveling with Mel and Raimia. On the mountain, they find some ancient ruins, and we learn that Mel can for some reason read the ancient writing left by the gods. Armes is astonished, but helps her to decipher it more accurately. After Mel gets her flower and they go down the mountain, Armis offers to take Mel on as his student to teach her ancient magic and the secrets of the world, but she refuses, saying now she just wants to go save Triss, and so they part ways. Back at the Hobbit City, Triss is saved by a spirit who emerges from the flower, who gives her own life to save his. That night, while Triss and Mel are sleeping, Armes appears and casts his own powerful healing magic on Triss. He comments that Triss looks a lot like him, before disappearing. Triss then has a dream where he believes he meets his mother, but she turns into some sort of masked machine. The next morning, Triss feels fully recovered already, and he sets off with Mel and Ramia. This is where Triss undergoes his first appearance change. The next parts of the game all center around trying to obtain the military cooperation of the other kingdoms of Elzaria for an all-out attack on Selgild. The first one of these attempts goes very wrong, though, when a letter the party brought from the hobbits falls into enemy hands, and Selgild learns that the hobbits are working with the resistance. The party returns to the hobbit city to find it decimated, with only Ramia's commander left. Boy, the party sure screws things up a lot in this game. The commander, with his dying breath, tells Triss he should seek out the Sword of El if he wants to have a chance against the Wizard Knights. Ramia at this point decides she's not going to have the heart to fight for a while and leaves the party. By the way, just like in Emerald Dragon, you should try and take all of the characters' equipment before they leave. I held on to Raphael's hat for the rest of the game. The name of the item may be Raphael's hat, but it's mine now. At the next kingdom, the party meets King Anfini, who wants to help but can't because his kingdom has been given a special responsibility since antiquity. They have to watch over an ancient tower with a sleeping giant inside that must never awaken. Lately, strong monsters have surrounded the tower and no one can even get there and back alive. So Anfini, seeing that Triss seems to be up to the task, asks him to investigate the tower. He also lends one of his best men, a priest named Shoruti. Shorty? Sholti. Here, if you go ahead to the next town before heading straight to the tower, there's a very short subquest you can carry out, similar to the ones in Emerald Dragon. It involves finding a pendant for the woman at the weapon shop. You get to explore one small, otherwise inaccessible area of the world map and do a short dungeon and boss to find it. Bring it back and you get a special weapon for Triss to use for a while. Later on in this town, Triss and Mel will take a boat to get to the later parts of the game, and once they do, they'll become unable to return. So sometime before this point, you'll want to make sure to do an optional dungeon, which is a lighthouse west of Ashrafil. The important thing about this dungeon is that there's a secret passage leading to an old man who will tell you the whereabouts of the best sword in the final dungeon. And the thing is, if you don't ask him about it, the passage to the sword won't be unlocked and you won't be able to get it. So now that people who are considering maybe playing this game for themselves have just heard my most important message for them, let's go ahead and put a spoiler warning before backing up to the tower with the giant in it. Okay, are we ready? In the tower, the party runs into Armes again, fighting with none other than the wizard knight Granzum. Triss wants very much to stay there and settle his score with Granzum, but one of Granzum's men has taken the key to awaken the giant to the top of the tower, and Armes tells Triss and the others to hurry there and stop him. There they find a silent metal giant and a man carrying out a ceremony to awaken it. After fighting and defeating him, Triss hurries back to where Armes and Granzum were fighting, but before he can get there, we're shown a cutscene of what's happening in the meantime. The topic of conversation between Armes and Granzum as they fight is Triss. Granzum remembers fighting with Triss in the opening sequence, and is certain he pierced Triss's heart with his last strike, and yet he's still alive. He knows there's something special about Triss, and also points out that both Triss and Armes have white hair, which I guess is rare in this world. Anyway, he freezes Armes with a force field and launches a final devastating projectile toward him. When Triss finally makes his way down the tower, both of them are gone. Now the monsters near the tower have subsided, and so Anfini agrees to give his kingdom's full support in the attack on Selgild. To get to the next kingdom, Triss and Mel take a boat, but the next town won't let outsiders pass through. They're a town of strong magic users who even have an arena for magic battles. So if Mel can defeat the mayor's daughter, Mayfa, they'll be considered honorary citizens of the town and allowed to pass through.
They're having a wizard's duel.
But in the battle, Mayfa accidentally releases a dreaded demon from an orb, and then she and Triss have to go get it back. The townspeople decide to keep Mel there so that Triss doesn't just run off without catching the demon. Man, this town is crazy. It was the mayor's daughter who released the demon, remember? So anyway, we've got to do the thing. This dungeon has advanced technology and robots to fight, giving further hints about Elzeria's past. After defeating the demon, who's a wooden robot, we meet its master, who is no longer of this world, though his spirit lives on somehow. He explains that he is a remnant of a lost, powerful force from long ago, and that he knows everything in this world, even calling Triss by his name before he can give it. He says that this world is on the verge of being engulfed by dark forces, and that it is Triss's destiny to stop it. He gives Triss something called the Key of Time, which he says will eventually unlock his true power and answer all his questions. Anyway, we get back to Mel, and Meifa comes along to the next couple of kingdoms until we're joined by a soldier named Lavan, and prepare for an attack on Seljild's island stronghold. As a random fact about Lavan, it's revealed that he is the father of the boy from the beginning of the game who had to be disguised as a girl. Since he's heard that it was Triss and Mel who saved his son, he's sworn to help them even if it means giving his life. Before heading into battle here, it's important to get all the best equipment and stock up on as many healing items and rings as you can carry, since these are the last shops you'll see in the game. But anyway, in the island fortress, there's an area with an electric floor where you have to get in this bouncy pod to avoid being electrocuted. Wow, what the hell is going on? Who came up with this? You have these weird momentum-based controls. But anyway, at the end of this, they get to an upward slope with a switch they need to hit on the other side. They can't make it up with all three of them in the pod, so Lavan goes up on his own and flicks the switch, but never makes it back alive. Guess that's all we'll be seeing of him. So next we meet up with Anfini in the same fort, and he joins the party for the first time as we do a boss. We then finally return to Asrafil. This time though we can't leave the city. Before leaving the party, Anfini gives Triss an ancient suit of armor, which reacts with Triss's Key of Time and turns the armor into the bright red-colored battle suit, the best armor and what gives Triss his final appearance of the game. We meet up with Ramia and Raphael again, who take turns joining the party on our journey through the sewers and into Asrafil Palace. There we are confronted by Thorn again, but who should come to help take her out but Mordred? Turns out Mordred has been trying to take down Seljild from the inside all along, and his true identity is Raphael's older brother. He joins the party for the rest of the game. And so it's the final showdown with Granzam, who unveils his secret weapon. It turns out the Sword of El isn't a sword at all, but rather that iron giant that we saw in the tower earlier. It immediately begins laying waste to the land. Granzam explains that in order to control the sword, they needed a pure soul, which is why they were abducting children. An adult controlling the sword would immediately go berserk with power. But Granzam eventually decided that they don't need to control it. Letting it go berserk will do just fine. So instead of a child, the Emperor of Seljild is at the wheel. We never do get to see what the Emperor looks like, by the way. We just have to imagine that he's inside the giant robot. Mordred realizes that since the robot was called here by Granzam, they can still stop it by defeating him. But before they can, Granzam decides to kill Triss the exact same way he did Armes. Mel, however, won't allow that, and sacrifices her own life to save Triss. As time seems to stop, Triss sees a flashback of El releasing 2 balls of light, one of which lands in the hands of who I assume is Triss's father. Now, back in the present, we see Armes' spirit turn into the other ball and bring Mel back to life. Now Triss is pissed, and it's time for battle with Granzam, who of course has 2 phases. The second one is pretty tough. Mordred can't even hit him at all at level 51.
Let's hex him.
Yeah.
Myth!
Yeah. Myth! Myth!
Myth!
Yeah.
Myth!
Myth! Myth! Myth!
I'm surprised I was actually able to beat this after a few tries, but just barely. And so with Granzam gone, the Sword of El comes to a halt, and of course the weather immediately clears up as well. In Granzam's place is an orb, which Triss reaches for, but Mordred knows that it is the tear of Deorio, another one of the treasures of the gods, which is said to grant every wish to its owner, but its true form was the monster that was Granzam. Mordred destroys it, and as if having confirmed its destruction, Aramis's spirit leaves Mel's body, and she falls lifeless into Triss's arms. The goddess El appears and explains that over 1,000 years ago, this world was home to a great civilization, but they became too reliant on the power they had created, and unable to control it. Even she is just a remnant of that great time, and the humans now occupying this world must continue to pay the price for the sins of the ancient civilization. Events like the one that happened this time when the Emperor of Selgild found the Tear of Deorio threatened to one day destroy the world, and even El doesn't have the power to stop it. Triss asks if that is why he was sent down to this world, to protect it in her place? But how can he says. He's barely able to protect himself, and couldn't protect Mel. He begs Mel to come back. He hasn't even begun to repay her for everything. Elle says that she can't bring people back to life, but she can give Mel half of Triss's life force. Oh wait, so you can bring people back to life then. You just contradicted yourself. But if she does, then Triss will become weak again and might not be ready to protect the world next time. Hey, that's actually a great reason for why the protagonist is weak again in the sequel. More games should do that. Oh, you don't play as Triss in the sequel? You don't play as Triss in the sequel. Well, what a waste of a perfectly good excuse. Anyway, Elle disappears and Mel returns to life, and that's the end. Or is it? Lots of questions are left not fully answered. Vain Dream definitely likes to drop hints, but not fully explain. I don't know for sure whether Triss and Aramis are brothers, literally or figuratively, and I don't think we're ever told why Mel can read the ancient writing, or why she occasionally displays incredible magic power. The sequel takes place in a completely unrelated world, so it's unlikely these questions will ever be answered. But let's look at the credits for Vain Dream 1. The names listed here are a who's who of what would become the Glodia staff after Emerald Dragon. The only ones returning here are main programmer / Glodia founder Osamu Ikegame, as well as Glodia music composer Nobuhito Koise. There are also 3 sub-composers listed, but if you look at who actually composed each track, you can see that Tenpei Sato and Nobusuke Sasahara only contributed a handful of tracks each. The real MVP of the sub-composers is Ikki Nakamura, who was a new face but would go on to contribute music for Glodia's subsequent games. The soundtrack has over 40 tracks, and I overall quite like it. Maybe even a little more than Emerald Dragon. The entire game takes advantage of the Soundboard 2, though a lot of the music is basically Soundboard 1 tracks, but with some programming tricks used to make them sound better. The SSG percussion gets replaced by the Soundboard 2's built-in rhythm channels, which do use stereo here. And besides that, the FM channels often have stereo data as well that just gets ignored when played with the Soundboard 1. And so you do feel like you're getting a full Soundboard 2 experience throughout the game. Due to the complex nature of the Soundboard 2 support here though, it seems impossible to play the tracks correctly using modern VGM player software. I can't find a single proper recording of the soundtrack on YouTube. It'll either have all the percussion missing, or you'll get a weird hybrid version of the soundtrack with the stereo FM sound of the Soundboard 2, but with the SSG percussion of the Soundboard 1. I think right now the only way to hear the Soundboard 2 version correctly is in the game itself, using at least a PC-88 emulator that has decent Soundboard 2 emulation. And quickly, while there aren't any codes for Vain Dream, there is a user disc made by a fan which allows you to get into some of the game's unused areas, which are usually blocked off by guards. One of these areas actually has shops with names like Junk or Antique Shop, though you can't actually interact with the shopkeepers or the NPCs. You can also get into one part of the world map that was never used in the PC-88 version. There's also actually a debug mode listed in system settings, which when you select it says that it can't be accessed in the retail version. Then why did you leave it in the menu? Fans have figured out how to enable the debug mode, but apparently only in the PC-98 version. it can do a few interesting things. And since I already have the PC-98 version on screen here, let's talk about that version now. By 1991, the PC-98 had taken over in Japan, and this seems to be the version that most people played. First of all, you'll notice that the character portraits and sprites have been upgraded to use the PC-98's full resolution and palette. However, the background graphics look like they were taken directly from PC-88, including the black horizontal lines that I always cover up in my PC-88 footage with my upscaler. Even the cutscene graphics have been left as is. The music is the equivalent of the Soundboard 1 on the PC-88. The very first PC-98 stereo soundboards didn't come out until later the same year. However, this version runs a lot faster and smoother, and probably did even on some of the newer PC-98 models available at the time. And one real advantage of this version is that it includes 2 optional subquests that weren't in the PC-88 version, one which even includes a new character. For the PC-98, there was a separate disc known as Vain Dream Bekkan Ver Comptiq, which was given out as a present to only 100 people by Comptiq magazine, and also by Glodia to some people who filled out survey cards. Luckily, it has been preserved and we can still play it today. So we started up and welcome to present disc. This world is not same Vain Dream world, not concerned with Vain Dream, but anytime, anywhere, any world. So in this one, Triss and Mel get off a ship and are stuck on an island for a few days due to a storm. On the island, they can explore bars and shops, one of which has a music player with illustrations similar to those found on the Emerald Dragon music disc. Oh, if only they had this on the PC-88, it would make listening to the Soundboard 2 music so much easier. But the main attraction on this disc is a mini adventure with a small overworld and dungeon. There are 3 brand new party members you can choose from in addition to Mel and Triss. There's equipment to buy and find, and even an end boss which will allow you to see a brief credit sequence if you defeat him. The final version of Vain Dream was for the FM towns, and wasn't released until much later in 1993. This one seems to use the same engine as Emerald Dragon for FM towns, and was ported over in pretty much the exact same manner. All the pixel art in the cutscenes has been replaced, some even with that hand-drawn art style again. The cutscenes have voice acting too. And there are even voices for when the spells are executed in battle. The music in the main game is all FM sound, and I noticed that a few of the tunes have been switched around. And in this one, they finally just got rid of that one first-person dungeon entirely. Vain Dream is everything you could want from Glodia's final PC-88 game. It's a special treat, especially for those who played Emerald Dragon and other Glodia games like Zavas. And while it certainly isn't the best JRPG released in 1991, I think it deserves to be on the list with the best of them from that year, if anyone remembers to include it. Oh, it's definitely one of the best PC-88 games ever, and a strong contender for number 1. Story-wise, it is a little weak in places. There's not much of an exciting hook at the beginning, like a dragon disguised as a human. Instead, it's a girl nursing a wounded soldier back to health and becoming a bit attached to him.
That's the Florence Nightingale effect. It happens in hospitals when nurses fall in love with their patients.
I also feel like we don't really get to know most of the other characters all that well. Emerald Dragon at least had a strong B couple, Hathram and Farna. And yet the game is extremely story-driven, with frequent cutscenes and plenty of character dialogue giving clear motivation for everything you need to do. The characters even move their lips in this one. I mean, this is a level of storytelling beyond what you would ever expect to see on the PC-88. As a result, unlike Emerald Dragon, I always knew what I had to do next, keeping the game moving along at a quick pace, and yet it was still satisfyingly long. But would I recommend it to others? Well, on one hand, Emerald Dragon is the true classic and has the more memorable story, so most people will probably play that one before even thinking about touching Vain Dream. But if they do get to Vain Dream, they'll find a game that's easier and more fun to play. Hell, skip Emerald Dragon if you want. I know that I, for one, thoroughly enjoyed Vain Dream, from beginning to end. That's all for this time on PC-88 Paradise. I'm your host, Mr. Jakes, and once again, I really had a good time on this one. On your screen right now, you can see the folks who helped to make this video possible. Thanks to all of them, and to you as well. Hope to see you next time.